Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode here on Tabletop Roleplaying Gays. I'm very sorry about the reflection in my glasses. I don't really know how to fix that. I have a light on my camera, I have my screen, I have my lamp over here, I have my the LEDs in my computer case, like all nice, pretty, and like seafoam bluish green. There's a lot going on, but hopefully it doesn't bother you too much. Today, talking about something pretty cool and pretty important that I got the idea from a video that my friends Dawn and Ryan posted over on their channel, Roll for Initiative. I'm going to have the specific video and their channel linked down below in the description, so please check it out. But what it was about is Dungeons and Dragons as a therapeutic tool. Now, I've written persuasive speeches for speech and comms about why to play Dungeons and Dragons and mentioned the side effect, like the therapeutic side effects, and I've also written a persuasive speech on using Dungeons and Dragons in therapy, or at least role playing and tabletop and what the like. And I also did a dissertation on the effects and how you can modify D&D and tabletop to be used as a therapeutic tool instead of just and like facilitating the therapeutic side effects. Um, and so I figured, oop, my little Clark Kent curls going on. But so when they posted that, I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing that I've talked about before. I could do something with that on the channel. So thank you, Ryan, for talking about that. It's a lot was said that's really important, and Ryan talked about the very important subjectives of it. But because I like science and I've written about it and I've done research, I wanted to bring in the objective side too and go into more explicit detail in continuing the conversation about D&D as a therapeutic tool. So this video is going to be broken up into like four-ish sections. The first section is going to be about the general effects and side effects of therapeutic effects of just playing D&D. Like, what is D&D and how do those core aspects affect things? Then I'm going to go into unintentional therapeutic side effects for neurotypical people. That it's not really like a goal to complete, but it ends up happening. Then there's the intentional and therefore the modification of tabletop to use it as a therapeutic tool. So instead of just playing D&D and letting it be therapeutic, you're playing D&D as a therapeutic tool. And then going into how, why, and should, well, not really should, you just definitely should, how D&D and tabletop and role-playing can and has been successfully used to help to be used as therapy and as a learning tool for people with intellectual disabilities, namely autism, like people with autism like myself, because that's what I've researched the most and can therefore speak kind of. Ooh, I'm so sorry, I hit the mic. Speak about. So, first off, what is D&D? D&D is a collaborative storytelling, mostly narrative driven. Sometimes it's just like dungeon crawls, driven thing where you hang out with friends and you all play characters or you run the game. So there's been a whole bunch of studies into just creation, having, or even just the process of changing something. If you can make something or anything go from point A to point B, whether that's not clean to clean, or messy to organized, or unfinished to finished, anytime you change the state of something and anytime you create an add-on to something, there is an innate sense of accomplishment and generally boost in mood when you make something, because it's satisfying to take something an extra step and know that you were one of the agents of change in that scenario. And in D&D, you can play characters that have massive, depending on the level, universe-wide impacts. You're not just saving a town anymore. You save the town. You save a city. You save the country. You save the world. And suddenly you save the entire realm that you exist in. We can't really do that here, at least not easily. So being able to feel that sense of personal agency is rewarding and helpful innately just by doing that. Then you have the positive effects of hanging out with friends. You are getting together with people you care about, and you're strengthening your interpersonal connections with people, which is just a positive thing in general. And if you don't know people and you are now expanding the amount of interpersonal connections you have, and that's a really positive thing. So now you see, just by playing D&D, you're already benefiting yourself psychologically and socially. And now, barring all of this, is with good groups that are trusting and nice. And then, just by playing D&D and putting your trust in other players and the DM especially, and then having everybody set boundaries, and then having those trusts and those boundaries be respected, is an incredibly healthy, rewarding, and promising environment, because it leaves you more open to trusting the right people. And that's an awesome thing. So that's the general thing. And that's a lot. That's really just great for you. Now, we're going to jump into, like, how things can affect you personally. By playing a character other than yourself, whether it's a minor change or something you're absolutely not like, can definitely help you figure out what kind of traits you personally have. For example, there are things that sometimes, depending on the people I'm around, I'll slip into. And I might not really like being like that. So when I play a character, if that's something that I'm hesitant about, then I can know that's a core value that I don't really stand for and don't like in myself. And that's not really intentional. I just make a character with a certain personality, and if I can easily slip into that thing and I'm comfortable in that, I know that's something that I'm fine with being, or at least something that I am, and it helps me figure out who I am as a core person and not just how I am around certain people. That's just a cool thing. You also have how it expands playing as other people with other views, and same thing with acting and as in tabletop, because it's basically role-playing on a stage. Acting is, it expands it helps facilitate social imagination. Everybody has a bubble, and that's not a bad thing per se. But if all you ever know is your bubble, and you never look at any of the mindsets or experiences outside of your own personal ones, it can be easy to go into the assumptions that generally people have had the same experiences you have had. By playing other characters with different backgrounds and views and values and entire life experiences, you can open up how you personally might feel in the situations that your characters have been. And that really bolsters a sense of empathy and sympathy with other people, which is especially why it's important to have lots of representation in D&D and tabletop, so that you can facilitate people's understanding of everybody in the real world as well. Granted, I'm not saying be tolerant of people advocating for genocide. I'm just saying, maybe, like, using it to humanize people, because just because the mayor of the town is in a wheelchair doesn't mean they're any less capable, and communicating that in a setting can be reflected onto the real world, and that's a positive thing. Then we also get into how acting out traits that you don't necessarily have may help bolster them. So, for example, if you are a generally not insecure, but not necessarily the most confident or outgoing person, if you make a cocky, arrogant, full of themselves, confident, beyond all get out character, just pretending to be like that can facilitate actually feeling like that. Because that's how I've gotten, granted, not to like arrogance levels, but like I've gained confidence in myself because whenever when I was in art class, I've always struggled with like imposter syndrome and hating my art. I dropped paint on the floor once and it splattered against the tile, and I looked my friend dead in the eyes and went, you know what? That tile, it belongs in the Louvre. It does. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever made. And even though I was joking, I said it with such conviction that any other time I made a mistake, by making jokes about them and being like, you know what, this is the best thing I've ever done, when something was done to even my average or not even my best work, it felt better and I was able to appreciate it because I wasn't talking badly even about me screwing up horrendously. Same thing with there was one time where I was like bedridden for like 3 days with a stomach bug, where all I did was lay in my bed or crawl across the hall to the bathroom, and I was miserable, and I basically crawled out of bed when I was able to, got dressed, and hobbled my way to school, and I looked like I crawled out of an early grave, and I knew it, and I looked my friend dead in the eyes before curling up on going to sleep on the ground in one of my professor's offices, and just went, this is the hottest I have ever been or ever will be. Tell Vogue that they're missing out. And then I passed out. But just things like that, even though I knew I looked like I should be playing an extra on The Walking Dead, joking like that helped facilitate actual genuine confidence. So when I put on lipstick and mascara and I'm just going out for the night, I felt genuinely, because I joked about looking hot as hell at my worst. So when I was even again at my I felt better about it. And that's awesome. And that's not even something you may intentionally do. You might make characters that are outspoken when you might not be, and it might make you feel more comfortable in speaking out in person. That might not have been an intended effect, but it ends up happening. And that's a great segue into how to modify D&D and the characters you play to make it more therapeutic and more beneficial instead of just a cool ass game. So where we're going to get into with this is that you can do that character stuff on purpose. Is that you can create a character that emulates all of the positive personality traits that you want to have. And then just inherently by embodying that character, you're going to find it easier to slip into that. It's kind of like when you're practicing accents for a theater production. If you're practicing and practicing and practicing for Oliver, and you're practicing your Cockney and British accents, you'll find yourself, until the show is over, every once in a while just casually accidentally slipping into it. And again, that's not on purpose, but you can make your characters like that for a reason. If you struggle with body positivity, you can make a character with your body type and make them confident as hell about how they look. And that'll start to rub off on you. And then on the flip side, you can make characters, you can actually do both at the same one, character with positive traits you want to have, or ones that you have that you want to accentuate and focus on, and also give them the character flaws that are things that you don't necessarily like about yourself and don't think are positive. For example, I compulsively lie. It's been a long-standing thing due to trauma and just all kinds of stuff. And I don't like that at all. And so, in this scenario, I could, group permitting, this is something you would have to talk about with the other players and your DM and all that, but I could make a character that is like me, wants to be confident and outgoing and overall just really smooth talking, and make them lie a lot. And if you make it so that it's a therapeutic setting on purpose, you can establish with the other characters and players, of course. This is so just as a preface. This isn't a normal D&D game at this point. This is Dungeons and Dragons with the underlying intention of everybody working on themselves. But I would ask in such situation, if we've all agreed on making this a game to work on ourselves, I would ask all of the characters and players to, every time my character says something that sounds fishy, or I, as my character, starts to say something fishy, to go, hey, so-and-so, are you telling the truth? And then give me, and my character, the opportunity to go, no, that wasn't honest. I don't know why I said that. I'm sorry. Or, like, I was just trying to contribute and I didn't know how, so I made up a story. And that's important, because doing that would set the groundwork outside of the game for those friends to be able to go to me personally when I start saying something that doesn't really super add up. They could go, hey, Charlotte, is that honest? And it would set the groundwork for me to be comfortable in going, yeah, no, it's not, I'm sorry. And that's a big thing. And that's why D&D and tabletop and role-playing in general is such a useful tool, because you can work on yourselves and you can learn and you can experience things in a consequence-free environment. You can do whatever and you can see the outcomes without actually feeling that heavy impact. My character can lie through their teeth, and then I can again see how things are going. She has to hop between stories with people, and she has different personalities for everybody, and I can go, yeah, no, that's definitely not what I want to be like. And by working on her, or working on your character, it also gives you a guideline on how to work on yourself outside of the game, and that's cool. You can also use D&D as like a therapeutic tool, like modified, of course, again, with a consenting group. You can use it to work through things. If you've lost a parent, or you've lost a loved one, or something has happened in one way or another, you can make a character, whether it's a complete self-insert or just similar to you in just that experience, or maybe others, and you can work through them in a safe setting. Because what's interesting is that a lot of people find it easier to talk about anxiety-inducing situations projected onto somebody else. So it's kind of like that classic example of like, so if so-and-so is scared of losing their partner, what would you tell so-and-so? Instead of going, I'm scared I'm going to lose my partner, how do I deal with that? Because it helps to remove yourself from the situation, because then you don't feel the pressure of being talked to or lectured, and it helps to give an embodiment separate from yourself. And that's why, like, for me, when I give my friends advice on like similar issues we've been having, often exactly what I tell my friends is exactly what I've needed to be doing. But I never process that's what I should be doing until it's something that I need to tell my friend to be able to help them. And it's the same general effect, in that you can make basically something to look at and somewhere to push on all of this working through everything, and then transfer it to yourself. So if you had a character, or let's say you've lost a parent, in game you could have a character that loses their parent, and it helps to embody somebody other than yourself and talk about problems you've been having. Because if you get into character and you start talking about how, like, all the other characters ask, hey, are you okay? And you're like, actually, no, I just got a letter that my mom passed away. And then, without feeling like you're in a group therapy session, and it's just they're helping your character, everybody can pitch in and talk to your character about, like, well, you could get a tattoo in her honor, or you could build a monument, or you could dedicate this party's work to her, and you can do all of these things. And it, again, everybody's talking to the character in front of you, not you. And it's not your friends talking to you, it's the characters in front of them talking to yours. But at the same time, it's still you and your friends looking each other in the eye, and your friend telling you that it's going to be okay. And even though that's role-playing, you feel that because it's a self-insert, basically. And it's a good way to remove some of the pressure of asking for help, is to disembody your problems from yourself and give it a focal point that you can witness instead of have to endure. And I hope I'm verbalizing this correctly, because it's really cool, and I hope I'm using words that make sense. But that's awesome, is how you can modify D&D to facilitate improving as a person and working through traumas and histories. And, like, if you don't feel like, let's say, you have any agency in the world, or, like, for example, if you feel helpless against, like, shitty, corrupt governments, conquering shitty, corrupt governments in your game can re-bolster that courage to try to do it in real life. Saving a forest can give you more... It can reinvigorate your passions, because so much of life going in the right direction is an uphill battle, especially when there's all sorts of corrupt legislation and powerful people that are only in it for the money, and just entire systematic institutions against you. And after a while, having no headway is kind of like Sisyphus. You're just pushing that rock, and it's moving, but you're not really going anywhere. It helps to have some victories sometime, and to have somebody who steals from the poor and steals from the rich and feeds the poor, and saves the forest from being, like, clear cut, and, like, basically resolves the refugee situation by eliminating your home country's interference somewhere else and setting up, like, a good asylum system and just letting everything work. And it helps to have a place where you can feel like you actually have agency and impact again. And again, that is also an unintentional thing, but you can, again, model it and modify it so that you do those things on purpose to reinvigorate yourself and have a sense of purpose. And we're pretty good on time. I'm kind of impressed with myself. I hope I'm not talking too fast. But then we get into D&D and tabletop as a learning and therapy system for intellectually disabled kids, primarily autistic like myself. I lost all of my research and all of my outlines and papers and stuff. I don't know if I put them on my old laptop, which doesn't work anymore, or if it's buried somewhere in a Gmail or a Google Drive. I couldn't find it, which sucks, because there's a whole lot of research into this. You can look it up. It's beautiful, all of the work that's gone into this. And there was, like, a website for a company who ran tabletop therapy and learning for intellectually disabled and socially challenged kids. And I really wish I could find them, but I searched for hours and I couldn't find anything. They're really cool, but basically, the key point in using it as a therapy and social learning tool for intellectually disabled children and socially challenged children is the fact that you can witness consequences without experiencing them. witness and experience consequences without actually feeling the impact. So, for example, if you have a kid who, due to any reasons, whether it's learning or just any reason, let's say every time there's conflict, they punch the person that is disagreeing with or upsetting them. That's obviously not a great way to handle it. If this is in a classroom setting, like a life skills class, if this kid continues to punch people, they will be like safely restrained until they stop punching people or trying to punch people. And then it will be tried to handle, but that can only make so much headway. And if that at any point is like lenient, they'll be like, oh, well, I guess I can punch people again. And this isn't a generalization. This is just based off of observation and personal research and understanding that I've seen working with intellectually disabled and socially challenged kids and all the research into it. So this isn't just me like talking out of my ass. This is actually stuff that I worked on. But if in a tabletop setting, granted, rules massively dumbed down, this is purely engineered to be a therapeutic and learning tool. It's very, very roleplay heavy. Not really any roles or stats, or but you basically ask what they want to do, or you give a scenario, ask what they want to do, and then you run it through them. So it's more just role playing than anything. But you would have them basically play as themselves, and you would, every time, let's say this kid walks up to the guard and the guard says like, halt, you need XYZ to get into the city. And the kid tries to walk in and the guard stops them, and then the kid then goes, I want to punch the guard. Well, it's going to be a bad time. The guard's going to arrest them and throw them in jail, and it's going to be a bad time. And then the next time the kid does that, you let it happen again. And then the third time, you go, well, listen, so-and-so, remember last time you tried to do this, or tried to punch them? You got thrown in jail, and that's happened every time. Maybe there's a different way to solve this. Maybe you can talk to them. And then, regardless of how smooth or anything they are, when they go, oh, how can we be let in? You make the solution pretty easy, and then you let it work. And then it starts reinforcing, oh, okay. Because instead of the, I punch people, I get held down, which sucks, you get, wait, if I'm upset, and I talk about what's making me upset, and we talk through it, things work out. And you start instilling that, and then the next time something like that happens in real life, you can be like, remember, punching doesn't work. Try talking, and it'll go better. And then you can continue to do that, and continue to reinforce what socially works, and is acceptable, and just generally a better way to do things. And that's awesome. D&D also encourages, I want to say it's separation of mind. I'm loose on the terms because it's been a while since I've talked about this on length, but there's something where basically it's the general understanding and concept that not everybody has been through or understands or knows exactly what you've been through. And that's something that a lot of autistic people and intellectually disabled people struggle with, myself included, is remembering that, oh, yeah, just because this is innate knowledge to me doesn't mean that this is common for everybody. And some people do that, but a lot of people like myself tend to do it a lot more. And that can strain relationships. Personal and other, like friend, platonic or romantic and otherwise. And it's really, really useful once you start getting into characters, because then it's the whole, like, I personally, as a person, know all about manticores. I know all of that. It's great. But my character, who's lived in a city her entire life, has no idea that that's a manticore. All she knows is that there's a lion with a scorpion tail and wings, and that's scary. she can assume, based off of the tail, that that probably stings and hurts, and that it has wings so it can fly. But with the barbs, it just looks like a stinger. But I think some manticores can throw their barbs, depending on the setting. She wouldn't know that. She doesn't know that those come off. She's never seen a porcupine or a manticore. And that's a thing where you have to separate what you know and what your character knows. And especially when you are a player, as they are there witnessing everything else the other players and characters are going through. But your character, if they're not in the room, they don't know what you know. They don't know about that conversation. They don't know that happened. And that's a concept that a lot of people genuinely take for granted, because it's not something that they really process, that some people don't have. And it's something that really helps to understand, because a lot of autistic kids, when they try to communicate based on, oftentimes based on, depending on where the spectrum they are and all that jazz, explain things in the context of everybody knowing exactly what they're talking about. Like, I want to go do that. And they're like, do what? And they're like, just that. Because they know exactly what they're talking about. But nobody else has that same frame of reference. And it can help to, again, in a mostly consequence-free environment, walk through that with them. That I understand that you know as a person that this happened, but remember, your character wasn't there. And you can start to facilitate the general understanding and remembering that sometimes they have to explain things a little more. And that's cool. And then you can modify that for any real, like, social skill or technique. And you can basically teach them about sometimes being blunt is okay. Like when people ask you to be honest and very, very truthful. And when sometimes it's okay to lie a little bit. And just kind of general things like that. Or like, a lot of times, sadly, autistic kids and intellectually disabled and physically disabled kids are occasionally, and way too frequently, because the frequency should be zero, abused. And due to trauma, this is another thing that also works for neurotypical people who have been through similar abuse and trauma. It might be hard to ask for what you need. My mom has had, well, not my mom is a life skills teacher. She's amazing at it. She's awesome. But I've met students, not of hers, but I've met students that are in these kinds of classes that if they get severely injured, they won't let anybody know until they don't look busy, because they don't want to interrupt. Because when they interrupt at home, they get hit. And this is a very exaggerated example, but you can provide a safe, comfortable environment for neurotypical or neuroatypical people to work through things and be more comfortable. You can take the time to ask them specifically, what do you want to do? How do you feel about this? And give them a space where they can safely and respectedly open up and give their genuine opinion, and therefore feel safer in doing so in general. And that's an awesome, awesome thing. And then there was one more point. Yes, representation in D&D. It's incredibly important to make people from all walks of safe life. And what I mean by safe life is, don't provide platforms and safety for people advocating for awful, terrible, horrendous things, like people advocating for genocide, or mass eugenics, or just god-awful things that should not at all be allowed to happen again. Whereas you should absolutely represent people of color and people with disabilities, physical and intellectual and invisible. Like, I have technically a physical disability, but nobody really sees it unless I stand up and pass out and hit the ground like a sack of bricks. It's usually not visible, but it always affects me. And the reason for this is because if you make characters, NPCs, heroes that share the same limb differences or same physical and intellectual disabilities as people and not make them the brunt of a joke or very clearly lesser because of what's wrong with them, you give these kids a choice to, like, a chance to not feel awful about things. I have a friend who, in one of their games, or a game we're talking about doing, we were discussing, can I make a character in a wheelchair? And I was like, absolutely. How realistic do you want this to be? Because we could make it so that rough terrain is extra difficult because it's wheels. But, on the other hand, if you want, we can also do something really cool and make it a standard wheelchair that you can basically speak a command word and make it a wheelchair spider climb, and you have like little like seatbelts basically, and you can go over any surfaces. And she was like, hell yeah, that would be cool. Because there's still very much things that don't really work, like can't super swim. Okay. And but stairs, spider climb. Technically, I would count that it sticks to the stairs enough. Climbing, no big deal. But trees, unless it's wide enough, though, it doesn't really help. So there are still drawbacks, but it gives her a cool aspect that she can still basically play a self-insert if we ever get around to doing that campaign. And just, yeah, but that's something you talk through with your players, but you also make inherently exist. You have war generals with limb differences who may or may not have like a magic animatronic arm. They might just deal with it. Some of them might have a shield strapped to what's left of their arm. Maybe they won't. Maybe they have like a sword blade in place. Or again, maybe they've done nothing with it and they just deal with fighting with one hand. This is stuff that people can more innately come up with and feel more comfortable with if you inherently include them. And that, I think, is where I'm starting to ramble. And it's probably a good time to call this to an end. But, yeah. Thank you again, Ryan and Dawn, for letting me talk about this. They posted it and I was like, hey, can I talk about this? I forgot how important this is to me and how much work I've put into researching this. And they were like, well, yeah, as long as you just, like, credit the fact that you got the idea from our video. And I was like, well, yeah, if I don't say that I got the idea from you, I'd kind of be really, really rude. So that is the case. I'm going to link their channel and their video below specifically. They're really cool, Dawn and Ryan. They're super lovely, and they're fun and charming, and they're just great. Please, please, please check them out. I have a fundraiser up on my Twitter. The link to my Twitter is down below, and the fundraiser shouldn't be that too hard to find. I'm selling Take Pride in Your Hobby with my little Tabletop Roleplaying Gays thing on the back for, like, I think it's like the next 25 days now, as a fundraiser for the Trevor Project. Please, 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 if you can afford it, check it out. If not, please, please, please retweet it and share it to people that might be interested and could support it. The shirts only get made if enough people support it, and it's all the proceeds are going to the Trevor Project, which is amazing. What else? I have a lot of stuff in the works, but I'm really busy with trying to do literally every other thing in my life, including work and prep for college and reorganize everything in my room, and it's just, we're doing a lot, and a lot of great things are happening. It's just a little hectic. So, there might not be a lot of concrete videos up because I'm kind of Poshmarking things and just doing stuff in bits and pieces. So I'll try to do smaller, more frequent videos about little things in the midst of me working on big projects that I will then release as the videos are finished, and do like more series and stuff like that. And yeah, if you're looking to be in a stream or a D&D game, please let me know on Twitter, preferably, because that's where I check the most. I want to run a game really badly, and I don't have a lot of people who are comfortable with streaming. We will do a session 0, just so that like I can sesh out whether or not people are exactly like whether it's going to be a problem. But yeah, please let me know if you have any ever suggestions. Please let me know. Also, if you can support me on Patreon, that would be awesome. Currently, it's only the $1 tier because I don't have enough time to regularly put out content that would really warrant making extra tiers, because other than behind the scenes stuff, which actually I could probably do now. So maybe I'll put like a $3 and $5. I don't know, man. Just to help me keep doing this as frequently as I would like to. But yeah, that's about what's going on. So, there's a lot happening, and I'm very proud of this. And thank you. We've gone from like 15 to 19 subscribers in like not very long, and that's really cool to me, because 19 is more than I ever expected to have. I was doing this to make what I want and share what I want to make with other people because I thought they might enjoy it, and I'm glad that people are. And yeah, it's just a good time. Thank you for being here with me. That being said, time to draw this video to a close. My name is Charlotte. Thank you again for joining me for another episode here on Tabletop Roleplaying Gays. And I am signing off.